Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise. Listen to our cries through the pain and lies. Our people gonna rise. Our people gonna sing.
Our people gonna sing.
Our people gonna sing. In spite of everything, hear our freedom ring. Our people gonna sing. Our people gonna fight.
Our people gonna fight.
Our people gonna fight. For what we know is right, we'll march into the night. Our people gonna fight. Our people gonna agree.
Our people gonna grieve.
Our people gonna grieve. Whatever you believe, we have the right to breathe. Our people gonna grieve. And our people gonna pray.
Our people gonna pray.
Our people gonna pray. Take our rights away. See you on election day. Our people gonna pray. Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise. Listen to our cries through the pain and lies. Our people gonna rise. Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Good morning. My name is Joan Rubinstein, and along with June Cerveny, I am one of 2 worship associates serving you today. Our service leader is longtime member Barbara Coley. Our minister, Margie Allen, and our director of religious education, Deborah Riddle, are not with us today. I'd like to offer a special welcome to anybody who is new with us for the first day or just wandered in on this online service. No need to hide, you're welcome here. I hope that you have found nourishment for your spirit among us. Unitarian Universalism as a living tradition is often referred to as a liberal or free religion. That said, we have 2 commitments: freedom of belief and an orientation toward inclusion, independence, and justice. Our services vary a great deal, so I hope you come to several. You can find additional information about our 7 principles on our website at UUFSB.org. Also, if you'd like to know what's coming up, please see our website or ask Susan, our congregational minister, to be put on the mailing list for the newsletter. You can contact her at office@UUFSB.org. Please stay with us after the service for a short, somewhat chaotic period of reading and crosstalk. It can be a time to check in with old friends or perhaps connect with someone new. You can have a deeper conversation with a few people if you check out of this service after the big greet and join the small group chat option. The link for that is on our website, UUFSB.org, or in the newsletter announcement.
The sound of the morning bell calls us now to the spirit of worship, asking us to open our hearts and our minds to the gifts of being together here in this hour. I invite you to gather a chalice or a candle to light as I light this chalice. And I offer words by Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst, and may it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, to reflect wisely, and to move boldly toward our highest ideals.
My bad is not always good is the title of my remarks. I chose the title because it fit the way some people admit to error by saying my bad in a casual, offhand way that acknowledges error as it signals confidence and even suggests the idea that what a person sees as a mistake isn't something to stress about. This applies to the content of my remarks. I do not think either the conception or the implementation of the Reading Reparations Study Group was a mistake, though the most rewarding experiences in the group were far afield from the group's stated goals. Hey, things happen. We learn to trust ourselves and earn the trust of others. Something like that happens in the excerpt from Joshua Bennett's poem, America Will Be. I asked my father to tell me the hardest thing about going to school in Jim Crow, Alabama, expecting some history I have already memorized. Boycotts and attack dogs, fire hoses, Bull Connor in his personal tank, candy paint, shining white as a slaver's ghost. His father answers, having to read the Canterbury Tales. He says, eating lunch alone. Now I hear the word America and think of my father's loneliness. The hands holding the pens that stabbed him as he walked through the hallway. Unclenched palms settling onto a wooden desk, taking notes, trying to pretend the shame didn't feel like an inheritance. You say democracy, and I see men holding documents that sent him off to war a year later. Motown blaring from a country boy's bunker as napalm scarred the sky into jigsaw patterns. His eyes open wide as the blooming blue heart of the light bulb in a Crown Heights basement where he and my mother will dance for the first time. Their bodies swaying like rockets in the impossible dark. And yes, I know that this is more than likely not what you mean when you sing liberty, but it is the only kind I know or can readily claim. The times where those haunted and hunted by history are underground and somehow daring to love what they cannot hold or fully fathom, when the stranger is not a threat, but the promise of a different ending. Let us join in singing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
In a moment, we will enter our time of meditation. Sit comfortably, breathe slowly. Think of the first time you were aware of race. How has your awareness evolved? After the meditation, we will sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
One of our spiritual practices is to take a collection each week, which we share with a local nonprofit organization. This month's social justice partner is Island Harvest, Long Island's largest hunger relief organization. Their mission is clear and simple: to end hunger on Long Island. Volunteers and staff deliver millions of pounds of fresh produce each year to food pantries and organizations serving people in need. They sponsor a summer food drive for kids in 70 communities when school lunches are no longer available. People are hungry in our community. Your contributions can make a big difference in their lives. You can send a check to the office, use the link posted in the chat right now, or you can click on the donate button on the website, UUFSB.org. Please give generously.
One, two, three, four. My life, your life, don't cross them lines. What you like, what I like, can we both be right? Attacking, defending, until there's nothing left worth winning. Your pride, my pride, don't waste my time. I don't wanna fight no more. 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 Take from my hands, put in your hands the fruit of all my grief. But lying down there easy when everyone is pleasing, I can't get no relief. Living ain't no fun, the constant dedication, keeping the water and power on. And there ain't nobody left, I cannot catch my breath, I'm gonna work myself to death. I don't wanna fight no more, 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 I don't wanna fight no more.
Reparations are a payment or group of payments we make to an individual or group of people in an attempt to restore them and or make them whole after we have caused them some personal and financial harm. It necessarily involves both a monetary payment and an apology. An apology being an admission of and atonement for the wrong that was done. With regard to African Americans, reparations are being discussed for slavery. But the obvious harm didn't end with the Emancipation Proclamation. Slavery was followed by complete chaos regarding employment and housing. The freed blacks were promised 40 acres each, but that never materialized. Then there was sharecropping and Jim Crow in the South, barely a step up from slavery. During slavery, Black people were stolen from their homelands and then not paid for their labor. During sharecropping, people's share was so little that it didn't cover essentials, which had to be bought at the plantation store. Theoretically, you were free to leave, but then the Klan or the sheriff could bring you back for an unpaid debt. Even after they switched to a wage pay model, the wage was too little to live on. Jim Crow laws were both so wide and farcical that anytime the system needed more prisoners, citizens were arrested for violating one or more of the laws. Prisoners were then leased out to businessmen who used them for hard labor jobs that no one would voluntarily take. Reparations are indicated. During the late 1800s, tens of thousands of formerly enslaved people moved north during the Great Migration with the promise of freedom and higher wages. The North was not the promised land they had hoped for. They were paid less than white people were, so again, there was a relative theft of labor. Housing segregation was enforced by redlining and covenants on deeds stating that buyer would not sell to Blacks. And the power of the vote was minimized by biased rules such as the poll tax, literacy tests, and gerrymandered election districts in both the North and the South. When that didn't work, Blacks who tried to register to vote were beaten to death. Reparations indicated. Even when Jim Crow laws were ruled illegal, segregation and mass incarceration in both the North and the South continued. The school to prison pipeline in the North had police resource officers embedded in the schools, and what should have been left as a juvenile behavior problem rose to the level of crimes. The war on drugs labeled small-time users of marijuana as criminals to be dealt with by long prison sentences if they were Black or brown. Whites, if prosecuted at all, got probation and community service most of the time. The stop and frisk style of policing provided plenty of people for the war to criminalize. So Blacks who had left the South for freedom found they were subject to a reign of terror in the North, as well as in the South that they had fled. During all the eras above, the enslaved and formerly enslaved were not paid fairly, if at all. Most were therefore unable to save anything, which meant that their net worth or personal wealth, whatever you want to call it, remained zero. They had no money to save for a down payment on a house. Government programs to help first-time home buyers were no help to them when redlining and whites-only covenants prohibited them from buying or getting a mortgage. For middle-class whites, home ownership has been the principal means of saving and attaining a positive net worth. Today, 250 plus years after slavery ended, the wealth gap continues. To quote William A. Darity and A. Kristen Mullen from their book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century, since today's differential in wealth captures the cumulative effects of racism on living Black descendants of American slavery, we propose mobilizing national resources to eradicate the racial wealth gap. The magnitude of ongoing shortfalls in wealth for Blacks vis-a-vis whites provides the most sensible foundation for the complete monetary portion of the bill for reparations. Barbara Coley was born and raised in Chicago with 9 siblings. She graduated from Chicago Teachers College and taught art and Spanish in Chicago public schools. She came east to attend graduate school at SUNY Stony Brook, where she studied African American, early American, and modern American literature. She began teaching in the English department at Suffolk County Community College as soon as she completed her degree at Stony Brook. Barbara met Lem as a graduate student at Stony Brook. They married and now have 2 grown sons and 1 grandson, Albert Lemmy Coley Maisley. Barbara and Lem joined UUFSB in 1998. She did her stint as member and president of the Board of Trustees and has served as co-chair of Racial Concerns Committee for over 10 years. Currently retired, she enjoys reading both fiction and nonfiction, prose and poetry. She also writes poetry, attends water aerobics, and plays tennis whenever her body permits. Now I welcome her to speak about a mistake that happened when she decided to facilitate a study group on reparations.
Thank you, Joan, for that introduction and that detailed explanation of reparations. My bad is not always good. I enjoy making decisions and acting along with others to bring ideas to fruition. Sometimes things do not come out as planned, but I've learned that however things turn out, they satisfy my longing to see ideas bear fruit. I will reference the response of members of the Reading Reparations Study Group. That's quite a mouthful, so we called it RRSG. RRSG was a 9-month-long reading discussion project with the goals of learning the history behind the calls for reparations and discussing the pros and cons of reparations in the context of how reparations might become public policy. We thought reading about and discussing the topic required us to focus on American history from local, regional, and national perspectives. We believe this endeavor would allow us to grow spiritually. Let me tell you why I wanted the RRSG to happen. One factor was my career as a teacher of adults, mainly at Suffolk Community College in Selden, where I taught composition, developmental English, and honors courses. All of that was over. I had retired, but I still wanted to discuss ideas with adults. Another reason was the curiosity and talent I noticed among the UUFSB congregation. It was that talent that prompted me and a group of UUs to mount an outdoor production of A Midsummer Night's Dream in the summer of 2000. There's something else that inspired me. For a brief time, I was a social worker in Chicago. What I noticed about my clients, all of whom were African American, is that for the most part, all they needed was an adequate income. The clothing allowance for a family on welfare, even if the daughter wanted to attend the prom, was meager. Let's say less than $2 a month per person. My clients needed more money than public aid allowed. These memories were in the back of my mind. I first learned about reparations in the Ta-Nehisi Coates article in the June 2014 issue of the Atlantic magazine. After reading it, I wanted our Racial Concerns Committee and our congregation to learn more about reparations. We did. Members of the Racial Concerns Committee created a flyer to recruit people. 34 signed up to participate or facilitate. Some were committee members, some were curious UUs, some were ministers of various denominations, some were university professors, some were members of Building Bridges in Brookhaven, some were members of the Multicultural Solidarity Group. Some were members of one or more of the groups I just mentioned. I thought what we learned through reading and discussion would prepare us to think about what kind of government policy for reparations could be created. This did not happen. Instead, our discussions of the readings encouraged us to share our personal histories. Those histories included details that made American history come alive as we listened, spellbound. For example, one member shared that he went to a play in Sag Harbor and recognized in the program the surname of the name of people who owned his ancestors when slavery was legal. After the show, they met, talked about their shared background, then went to dinner where the wrong of slavery was raised and then acknowledged. The acknowledgement was vital for both parties. Several of the articles we read stressed how important this is to prepare the ground for negative attitudes about reparations to shift. Another extraordinary thing happened. One member of RRSG shared with us that her family had owned slaves too. And when she questioned a relative about slavery, the relative said, "Well, not all of us were bad people." That wasn't the most enlightening thing we learned from this member. She shared with us that during the social distancing and lockdown period because of COVID, several of her relatives called to ask if her family needed money. She said that was when she understood that the wealth her family offered to share with her was unavailable to descendants of people held in slavery, not just because slaves were not paid for their labor, but the ongoing discrimination meant there was no inherited wealth to pass on, to be shared during 2020, when many people were without income. I want to emphasize here that we listened attentively when a member of RRSG told us about the impact of slavery and ongoing discrimination on contemporary descendants of enslaved people. And she told us this to let us know what she had learned about inherited wealth and income inequality. There's a way of reading about history that allows us to distance ourselves from events, but there was no denying what this member shared with us. We each knew who called to ask how things were going, and only the privileged among us had relatives volunteer all the financial support that our family might need. These two examples made the after effects of slavery in America come alive for us. We started out as a group of 34. After the first two gatherings, we met on Zoom. At the final session of the 18 RRSG members remaining, 14 of us responded to frequently raised objections to reparations. Their remarks are posted in the archive of the Racial Concerns Committee webpage. Did participants' reactions to the objection Darity and Mullen discuss indicate mistake or prescience? You be the judge. Read their responses to individual objections to find out. What was the mistake I made? I think it was assuming that after we read and discussed some of the most salient articles, chapters, and entire books in the bibliography, and believing in my heart of hearts that with education, the majority of Americans would be convinced of the rightness of reparations. That was a conservative stance on my part for the following reason. Communities in Evanston, Illinois, and in Minnesota and elsewhere took the bull by the horns and said, let's make reparations policy here and let's do it now. These communities did not wait for top-down direction. They did it for descendants of enslaved people living among them today. Hallelujah. Talk about surprise and sheer delight. My mistake does not loom large. I wanted the group to do research that would lead us to formulate what we thought would be good ideas for public policy. I was ambitious, but so were the pundits who told us that the majority of white Americans had yet to be convinced of the rightness of reparations. They were implying that white Americans could not be convinced. As a delegate to GA 2021 on Zoom, I attended a session about reparations. A takeaway for me was that one speaker privileged the moral degradation of slavery, referencing Kunta Kinte's beating as irremediable horror. The speaker saw that as more important today than reparations in the form of money to support education, housing, jobs. The speaker did not acknowledge that post-slavery discrimination and extreme injustice continues. These conditions are manifest today as extreme economic disparity. I intend to continue to stress who benefited, who benefits financially from slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, redlining, and job discrimination. Reparations remain a contentious issue that Americans oppose because they do not understand or do not care what happened to prevent wealth creation in African American communities. But bit by bit, slowly but surely, indisputable knowledge makes change possible. Thank you, and a special thank you to RRSG participants, facilitators, and to Susan Catanzaro. You rock. Our closing hymn this morning is number 116, I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my
I'm on my way.
Thank God I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I asked my sister,
Ask my sister,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my sister,
Ask my sister,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my sister,
Ask my sister,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I'm
I'm on my way.
Thank God I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I asked my brother,
Ask my brother,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my brother,
Ask my brother,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my brother,
Ask my
come
brother,
and go with me.
come and go with me.
I'm on my
I'm on my way.
Thank God I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my
to
way
the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
to the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my
I'm on my way.
God, I'm on my way.
Our closing words this morning are by Rosemary Bray McNatt. The truth is this: if there is no justice, there will be no peace. If we cannot bring justice into the small circle of our individual lives, we cannot hope to bring justice to the world. Nothing that we do is more important than making justice real here where we are.
As our time together draws to a close, I sound the bell to mark this transition. I extinguish our chalice, and I share these words by Maddie Cefantis. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our heart with its message of love and justice, taking it to the world that we live in until we are together again.
The benediction this morning is by Jim McGraw. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice. I mean go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace.
Good morning.